Would you sell your pride to save your child's life? I did. I went to my boss and offered him one night for $100,000. Not for me. For my son. This is how everything changed. My name is Layla. I'm 26 years old, and I work in a multinational company. When people hear that, they think my life must be stable, maybe even good. But if they looked a little closer, they'd see the cracks beneath the surface. Most nights, I'm the last one to leave the office. The lights are dim, the air feels heavy, and the ticking clock is the only sound keeping me company. My co-workers often tease me, "Layla, you never rest, do you?" I just smile. What else can I say? Rest is a luxury I can't afford. I'm a single mother. Every day I wake up before sunrise, prepare my little boy's breakfast, and promise him that everything will be okay, even when I'm not sure it will be. My son, Amir, is my whole world. He's only 6, but life has already been cruel to him. He's sick, very sick, and the doctors say he needs surgery soon. Without it, they don't know how long he'll last. When I heard the cost, $100,000, I thought I misheard. That number was bigger than anything I'd ever seen. My salary barely keeps the lights on. I have no family to help, no savings, no one to turn to. I tried to keep going, hoping maybe there would be some miracle. But hope doesn't pay hospital bills. At night, after Amir falls asleep, I sit by the window with a cup of tea that always goes cold before I take a sip. The city glows outside, cars, laughter, life, but I'm not part of that world anymore. I'm just a shadow watching from behind the glass. Sometimes I wonder when I started to disappear. Maybe it was when Amir got sick. Maybe it was the day his father left. Or maybe it was all the nights I worked late, telling myself I was doing it for him. For us, even though I was breaking inside. Then came the day when the doctor called me into his office. I could tell by the look on his face that it wasn't good news. "Layla," he said softly, "your son's condition is worsening. The surgery can't wait much longer." I remember asking, "How much time do we have?" And he just looked down. That silence hurt more than any words could. I went home that night and watched Amir sleep. His little chest rose and fell so slowly, like even breathing was a battle. My hands trembled as I touched his hair. I whispered to him, "I'll save you, my love. I don't know how, but I will." But deep inside, I knew I was out of options. My heart was heavy with fear, my mind spinning in circles. And then, a thought crept in, one I didn't want to face, one that made my stomach twist in shame. There was one person who could help me, my boss. The idea haunted me. I told myself it was wrong, impossible, humiliating. But every time I looked at Amir, every time I heard his weak cough or saw his pale face, the guilt began to fade beneath something stronger, desperation. That night, I stood by the window again. The moonlight fell on my reflection, and I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were tired, but her heart refused to give up. A tear slipped down my cheek as I whispered into the quiet room, "Forgive me, Amir. I'll do anything for you." Tomorrow, I decided, I would go to my boss and ask for the impossible. I barely slept that night. The thought of what I was about to do kept me awake until dawn. The city outside was still dark, the streets quiet, and I sat at the edge of my bed, trying to convince myself I wasn't about to cross a line I could never uncross. All my life, I believed in dignity, in working hard, earning what you have, and keeping your head high even when life drags you down. But now, dignity felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. My son's life was hanging by a thread, and all I had were my tears and desperation. By morning, my eyes were swollen from crying, but I still dressed carefully. I ironed my blouse, tied my hair, and tried to look composed, even though inside I was breaking. The moment I walked into the office, I could feel the weight of my decision pressing against my chest. My hands trembled as I typed meaningless numbers into the computer, waiting for the courage to speak. Finally, when everyone else had left, I walked to my boss's door. The lights were still on inside. He was a kind man, or at least, he used to be before I started seeing him as the only hope I had left. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Sir," I said softly as I entered. He looked up, surprised to see me still there. Layla. It's late. Is something wrong? I took a deep breath, my throat dry. There's something I need to ask you. Something important. He gestured for me to sit, his expression curious but patient. I sat down, staring at my hands. My words felt heavy, like stones lodged in my chest. I need money. A lot of it. His brows furrowed. How much? $100,000. Silence filled the room. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the distant honk of a car outside. He leaned back slowly, eyes searching my face. That's a big amount, Layla. May I ask why? I looked down. My voice shook as I whispered. My son, he's sick. The doctors said he needs surgery. Without it, I couldn't finish the sentence. My words dissolved into the air. He sighed, his tone softening. Layla, I wish I could help. But even if I wanted to, I'd need an explanation for that kind of money. The company wouldn't allow. I interrupted before I could stop myself. Not through the company. From you. His eyes widened slightly. He understood what I meant, or at least, he thought he did. I could see confusion and disbelief flicker across his face. From me. Personally. I nodded. Yes. I wouldn't ask if I had another way. I swallowed hard, the next words burning my tongue. If you agree, I'll spend the night with you. The words came out like a confession, quiet but sharp. I couldn't look at him. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, my shame clawing at my chest. I wanted to disappear. He didn't speak for a long time. I could feel his eyes on me, shocked, conflicted. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. Layla, do you know what you're saying? Tears blurred my vision. Yes. I know exactly what I'm saying. He stood, pacing slowly. You don't have to do this. There must be another way. There isn't, I said, my voice breaking. You don't understand. My son, he doesn't have time. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, he stopped walking and looked at me, not with lust, but with something else. Pity, maybe. Or sadness. Then, after what felt like forever, he nodded slowly. If that's what you want, then yes. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Relief and disgust flooded through me at once. I wanted to scream, to cry, to take it all back, but it was too late. I had already made my choice. That night was the longest of my life. I don't remember much, only the sound of my own heartbeat and the echo of my thoughts repeating one sentence over and over. It's for Amir. It's for Amir. It's for Amir. When morning came, I left before he woke up. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. The money was in my account, but my heart felt empty. I told myself I had done what any mother would do, but deep down, I knew I had lost a part of myself I would never get back. And yet, as I held Amir's tiny hand that evening and watched him smile weakly from his hospital bed, I realized something painful. I would do it again if it meant saving him. Because sometimes love doesn't make you pure. It makes you desperate. I remember walking home that morning feeling hollow. The streets were still wet from last night's rain, and the world seemed quieter than usual, as if it, too, was ashamed of what I had done. I didn't cry, not yet. My tears had dried somewhere in the darkness of that room. All that was left inside me was an ache that felt endless. I went straight to Amir's hospital room. When I saw him, all my walls broke. He looked up at me with that little smile of his, weak, but real. Mama, you came early today. My throat tightened. I forced a smile and brushed his hair back. Yes, my love. I missed you. He giggled softly. You always say that. And for a moment, just for a moment, I felt like I could breathe again. That tiny spark of joy in his eyes, that was why I did everything. Every sin, every shame, every broken piece of myself, it was all for him. But the guilt still sat heavy on my chest like a stone I couldn't move. That night, when I closed my eyes, I kept seeing his face. My boss. The way he had looked at me, not cruelly, not kindly either, just lost. Maybe he was as confused as I was. Maybe he didn't want it to happen any more than I did. But in the end, he had said yes. And I had gone through with it. The next morning at work, everything felt different. The office lights were too bright, the air too cold. When I saw him across the hall, my heart clenched. He nodded politely, like nothing had happened. I wished he had ignored me. I wished the ground would open and swallow me whole. 4 days, I avoided his eyes. I buried myself in work, taking on every task, every late-night report, anything to keep my mind from remembering. But one evening, as I packed my bag to leave, I heard his voice behind me. "Layla." I froze. I didn't want to turn around. "Yes, sir. Can we talk?" His tone was gentle, uncertain. I hesitated, then nodded. We stood in his office again, the same place where everything had started. He looked nervous this time, his hands clasped together. "Layla, I've been thinking about that night." "Please," I said quickly, my voice trembling. "Don't." He frowned slightly. "I just want to understand. You didn't have to do that." I laughed bitterly. "Didn't I? My son was dying. You think I had choices?" He looked at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," I said, though the words felt like lies. "You helped me. That's all that matters." He took a small step closer. "Then why do you look at me like that? Like I'm your enemy?" "Because every time I see you," I whispered, "I remember the part of me I lost." The silence between us was sharp enough to cut through the air. Finally, he said quietly, I'd like to see you again. The same offer." My heart stopped. "No," I said immediately. "No, please don't ask me that again." He looked confused, maybe even hurt. "Why not? Did I do something wrong?" I shook my head, unable to meet his eyes. "You didn't. I just can't." I left his office before he could say anything else. My legs felt weak, my chest tight. Outside, the night wind hit my face like a slap. I walked for hours before going home. When I finally got there, Amir was already asleep. I sat beside him, watching his small chest rise and fall. I wanted to tell him everything, how scared I was, how lost, but I couldn't. He deserved a mother who was strong, not one broken by shame. Weeks passed. He didn't bring it up again, and I was grateful for that. But every time he passed my desk, every time our eyes met, I felt the same sting in my heart. It wasn't anger anymore, it was sadness. Sadness for what we had both done. For what we had become in that one night. Sometimes I wondered if I could ever forgive myself. But forgiveness felt like a distant dream, something made for people braver than me. And yet, even as I tried to forget, fate had other plans. Because one day, our paths would cross again, in the last place I ever expected. It had been weeks since that night, and I thought I'd finally begun to bury the memory deep enough to survive. Work had gone back to its usual rhythm, endless deadlines, long hours, tired eyes. My boss and I barely spoke now. Our conversations were short, polite, and wrapped in an invisible wall of silence. Maybe that was for the best. Amir's surgery date was approaching. Every time I looked at the calendar, my heart raced. The doctors had told me his condition was worsening, and I could see it, the way his small hands trembled, the way his laughter had become softer, rarer. But I held on to faith. I told myself that after the surgery, everything would be better. We would both start over. One afternoon, I left work early to take Amir to one of his hospital appointments. He was quiet in the car, staring out the window. "Mama," he said suddenly, "when I get better, can we go to the park again?" My throat tightened. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll go anywhere you want." He smiled, his little face lighting up like sunlight after rain. That smile alone made every sacrifice worth it. When we reached the hospital, the nurses greeted us warmly. They all knew Amir by name now. I sat by his bed as the doctor examined him, my heart pounding with each word I couldn't understand. The sound of machines, the faint smell of disinfectant, it was all part of my new reality. I was sitting there, holding Amir's hand, when a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. "Layla." I froze. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. But when I turned, my heart almost stopped. It was him, my boss, standing there in a neatly pressed suit, holding a bouquet of flowers. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion the moment our eyes met. "Sir," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" He blinked, clearly taken aback. "I'm visiting one of our charity patients. The company sponsors some of the children here." "I didn't know you." He stopped when he saw Amir. The room went silent. He looked from me to my son, then back again. "Layla, is this your son?" I looked down, unable to meet his gaze. My eyes filled with tears. "Yes. He's my son." He took a hesitant step closer. "He's the one you..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. I nodded, and that was all it took. The truth hung between us like a storm ready to break. His face changed, shock, realization, guilt. "My God," he whispered. "Layla, all this time. I thought..." He stopped, shaking his head, as if trying to erase the image of that night from his mind. "You did it for him." I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't know what else to do. He needed the surgery. I had no one. I was desperate. He didn't speak for a moment. His hands were clenched at his sides, and when he finally looked at me again, his eyes were full of something I hadn't seen before, not pity, not desire, but regret. Deep, aching regret. "Layla," he said softly, "why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered?" I asked bitterly. "You would have said no, and I would have still been standing there, helpless." He shook his head, his voice rough. "I thought you wanted..." He stopped himself, closing his eyes. "God, I'm so sorry." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic beeping of Amir's heart monitor. I turned away, brushing the tears from my face. "It doesn't matter anymore. You helped me save him. That's all I care about." But he didn't move. I could feel his presence beside me, heavy with guilt. "No," he said finally. "It matters to me." He looked at Amir, sleeping peacefully now. "I'll make sure he gets everything he needs. The best doctors, the best care. You won't have to do this alone anymore." I looked at him, stunned. "Why? After everything, why would you do that?" He smiled faintly, his voice breaking. "Because now I understand. And because I owe you more than you'll ever know." From that day on, he kept his promise. He visited Amir every day, brought toys, talked to the doctors, paid for the surgery in full without hesitation. I didn't know how to thank him. I didn't even know how to face him sometimes. But slowly, his guilt turned into something softer, kindness, patience, something that began to heal the cracks inside me. And as for me, I began to see him differently too. Not as the man from that night, but as the man who stayed. The man who didn't walk away when he finally knew the truth. Maybe forgiveness begins not with words, but with understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the weight on my heart was starting to lift. The day of Amir's surgery arrived like the edge of a storm, heavy, tense, full of silent prayers. I held his tiny hand as the nurses prepared him, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Mama will be right here when you wake up," I whispered. He nodded weakly, his eyes too brave for his age. When they wheeled him away, I thought my heart would collapse. Hours passed. Each tick of the clock felt like an eternity. My boss sat beside me in the waiting room, silent, his hands clasped together. Neither of us spoke, but somehow, I felt comfort in his presence. It was strange, how someone who once represented my deepest shame now stood beside me through my greatest fear. Finally, the doctor came out, his face calm, almost smiling. "The surgery was successful," he said. "Your son is going to be fine." I didn't even realize I was crying until my knees gave way. My boss caught me before I fell, his arms steady around me. "It's over," he whispered. "He's safe now." For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. The weeks that followed were like waking from a long, dark dream. Amir grew stronger day by day, his laughter filling the hospital room like sunlight. The nurses adored him. The doctors called him a miracle. And me, I was finally learning how to smile again. My boss, his name was Daniel, though I rarely said it aloud, never left our side. He made sure Amir had everything he needed, even after the surgery. He didn't just help with money, he was there. Every day. Reading to Amir, bringing him toys, making him laugh. Sometimes I caught him watching me, quietly, as if trying to find the right words he still couldn't say. One evening, after Amir was discharged, Daniel offered to drive us home. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Amir fell asleep in the back seat, clutching his toy car. The silence between us was warm now, no longer awkward. Finally, he spoke. "Layla," he said softly, "I've been thinking about everything that happened. About that night, about you." I looked out the window, my heart tightening. "You don't have to say anything." "But I do." His voice was firm, full of emotion. "You made a choice no mother should ever have to make. And I was blind, selfish enough to not see your pain. I can never take back what happened, but I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that alone again." I turned to him, startled. "Daniel." He looked at me, his eyes gentle. "I care about you. And Amir. More than I ever expected to. You don't owe me anything, Layla. But if you'd let me, I'd like to be part of your life. Both of your lives." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My heart ached, not from sorrow this time, but from the fragile hope blooming inside me. I thought of everything we had been through, the shame, the regret, the silence. And yet here we were, two broken people, standing in the same light. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "You don't know what you're asking for. I'm not the woman I used to be." He smiled softly. "Maybe that's exactly why I love you." Those words hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man from that night, but the one who stayed, who cared, who fought for us when he didn't have to. Months passed. Amir was healthy again, full of energy and laughter. Daniel visited often, bringing him books and silly jokes. Slowly, the guilt I carried began to fade, replaced by something I never thought I'd feel again: peace. One evening, as we sat together on the balcony watching Amir play, Daniel turned to me. "Layla," he said quietly, "I know life hasn't been kind to you. But maybe it's time to let it be. Maybe it's time to let someone love you without conditions." My heart swelled. The sunset reflected in his eyes, and I realized that sometimes love doesn't come in the form we expect. It's born from pain, from forgiveness, from the courage to start again. He took my hand, his voice trembling slightly. "Layla, will you let me be a father to your son, and a husband to you?" Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I will." As I tell you this now, I look at the two of them, my son and the man who saved us, and I realize that love isn't always beautiful at first. Sometimes it's born in the darkest corners of desperation, but if you nurture it, it grows into something pure. I thought I had lost everything, my dignity, my peace, my hope. But life, in its strange mercy, gave me another chance. This is my story. A story of sacrifice, of pain, of forgiveness, and of love that bloomed from the most unexpected place. Like and subscribe for videos like this.